This video is brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to websites, online stores, etc., there's no place to build a beautiful online presence like Squarespace. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another ranked video, but today we're not ranking movies, we're ranking a bunch of guys. Guys from the hit show Avatar: The Last Airbender. You might be thinking, Karsten, this is random. The show is kinda old, why now? Why here? See, I've been rewatching the show for the first time since I was a young tot, and I gotta say, it's not only one of the best cartoons of all time, but it's just simply one of the best shows in general. And if you've seen the show yourself, you know that's because of how carefully developed and unique each character in this show is. And because I just feel like having some fun this week, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna rank them. This isn't ranking every Avatar character, I can only include so many, but I think that's all I have to say. Let's not beat around the bush anymore. Alright, before you show up to my place and beat the shit out of me, let me explain. I have nothing against Momo. Momo is funny, he's fine, he's Momo. I truly think he just doesn't get his time to shine in the series the way his buddy does. Momo is the comic relief of the show. He's a guy who can help with pretty small tasks, but what does he really contribute to this group, you know? My favorite Momo scene is when he starts tripping with Saka in the desert. I think those two deserve their own spin-off, to be honest. But on his own, Momo's just nothing, really. The fact that that's my favorite Momo scene says all you need to know about the lasting impact this guy has. Anything he does, Appa can do a lot better. Sure, his design is cool, but as a character, he's definitely the weakest of the main group based solely off the fact that sometimes I forget he's there. Alright, I feel like this is gonna go over even worse. Again, I don't hate any of these characters. There's not one bad character in the show, but if there's any character that lacks the spice to keep me interested, it's Katara. Katara feels like the mom of the group. She feels without a doubt the most mature, she's skillful, not very funny. She's absolutely essential and is the reason the group hasn't been captured like 20 different times already, but she's just boring. And you know what, that's okay. The group dynamic would feel off and overwhelming if not for this type of character. It's just unfortunate that it has to be Katara. What sucks is the show doesn't really find a way to make her personality type work until season 3 in the Painted Lady episode. In that episode, we see Katara at her most selfless, protecting a village under complete animosity. And it's this really sweet look into how she operates and views the world, prioritizing protecting and caring for others over literally anything else. This is also seen in the finale of season 2, but if you haven't seen the show, I'm not gonna spoil it. I think Katara is such a sweetheart who deserves all the good in the world. She's just not nearly as interesting as everyone else in this show. Tofa is so aggressively mid-tier for me. I know that she has her fandom and she's not a bad character by any means. She's actually pretty great, hence why she's this high. I just don't see myself ever feeling that connected to Tofa when I'm watching this show. What's so great about Tofa is that she was late to the party, joining the team around season 2, and despite feeling like the new kid for a brief second there, and also being partly to blame for losing Appa, she doesn't really annoy you at all. She's got this hard shell, yes, it's part of why for a lot of people she's very lovable, but when that whole incident happens, she seems genuinely heartbroken and upset at herself. It adds this new layer to Tofa where she goes from being someone you're scared to talk to being someone you just want to give a hug, but she's also fucking sick. When she literally invents metal bending, I'm like, Tofa's an interesting character, especially in the context of the group she's traveling with, but she's just not the type of character that I can usually connect with emotionally, at least in the same way I connect to these other fools. I feel like Saka is a very love him or hate him kind of guy. To a lot of people, he might be extremely annoying. If his character existed in modern society, he'd probably be really into Deadpool or something. But in my opinion, despite that, he's a lovable goof who I can't get enough of. A lot of you might argue we don't really get to see Sokka's genuine side until season 3 in the Sokka's Master episode, the episode where Sokka is trained in sword fighting to prove himself useful, which is a really touching premise to begin with for a character like Sokka, someone who's felt like the butt of the joke for 3 seasons now, finally coming to terms with his identity and who he really wants to be. I think that's why I like Sokka so much. I feel like I'm watching a very honest arc for a teenage boy. Someone who's so careful with portraying himself as vulnerable, slowly coming to terms with who he actually is. While I think that episode in season 3 is definitely Sokka's moment in the show, I think this growth is prevalent in so much of the series. He's consistently trying to feel validated by those around him because of the lack of a father figure for so much of his upbringing. It's like the show went, yes, he's a comic relief character, but let's try and build something with that. Understand why someone may put themselves in that role within a group. I just like him a lot, and there really isn't a single moment in the show where I'm not rooting for him. Azula is a fantastic villain, probably one of the best TV villains off the top of my head. Usually antagonists who manage to be self-aware and let it be known that they're the bad guys can get kind of irritating, but anytime Azula acknowledges how evil she is, it works. Probably because they write her up so over the top that it doesn't even matter. The beach episode truly feels like the most self-aware the show manages to get with Azula, and I cannot tell you how funny that episode is. Seeing what they do to her is honestly like a breath of fresh air after Zuko tries desperately hard to be taken seriously the entire series. The show finally gets it and has some fun with the angst associated with the Fire Nation, and it's great. It's funny, I initially had her much lower on this list because I thought she was one-noted, and then I grew up and was like, no, she's not. Azula definitely feels like the spiciest of all the characters. Unlike Zuko, she feels like an actual threat, you know? I'm really dancing around spoilers here, but it just makes for one of the most satisfying and interesting dissections of a villain out there. You never empathize with her, but you're always interested, you know? In that sense, she's a terrific villain and is always so much goddamn fun to watch in any fight scene. Also, apparently she's 14? Like, what? I know what you're thinking. Appa? This far on the list? He can't even talk! Well, listen, Appa is one of my favorite things about this show. Not only is he adorable, not only does he have the coolest character design, not only is he useful as hell, but I think he really ties the group together. You can't talk about Appa and his significance without acknowledging the season 2 situation where they lose Appa for a surprisingly long portion of that season. It's in that moment where you realize Appa is their home. It's the one sense of comfort and retreat that the team gets in the show. That's never been more evident than when they lose him. Their first reaction, naturally, is a loss of transportation, especially in a desert, which sucks, but they move through it. They manage to get out of the desert without Appa. And that's when you realize that's never what it was about. This bond that Team Avatar shares isn't about using each other for their respective skills, it's about community and forming a family. Cheesy as hell, but it's a kid's show, what am I supposed to say? I only love Appa so much because of how much of this message can be communicated through him in the show. His solo episode is one of the most devastating things I've ever seen. He's just really adorable and good and so important. In so many ways, the show would not be what it is without him. Not to sound cliche, but I love Aang. Maybe that's not even cliche. For him being the main character of this show, it feels like people don't often give Aang the attention he deserves. And I don't know why, he really is kind of the perfect protagonist. He's charming, funny, adorable, has a cool arrow on his head, and he can do cool ass shit. But when he gets angry, oh boy. Aang is just genuinely interesting to watch. His unpredictable go-for-it attitude makes everything he does seem so surprising and risky, yet so him. I honestly like Aang most when he's separated from the group and can go full goofy. Like, once again, in season 3, when he goes to Fire Nation school, you realize that his childlike wonder applies to literally any scenario he finds himself in. The writers do so much with his curiosity throughout the series that really makes him out to be an inspiring figure to look up to. Shit, I'm 23 and watching this dude makes me feel inspired. Not to mention his fight scenes. I mean, come on, dog. When he stops the train from coming into Ba Sing Se, that's an all-timer. It ends and he has this goofy look on him, covered in sand and mud and whatnot, and you just can't help but smile. They cut away to these cutesy moments all the time in the show, and unlike a Marvel movie, they never feel like they interrupt the intensity of the scene. They only elevate the fun of it all. And I think that's kind of exactly what Aang represents to me. A really intense, but really fun guy. Listen, man, he started as just like, whatever, a goofy old man, sidekick with Zuko, that's cool. But over the course of the series, Uncle Iroh has evolved into being one of the sweetest, wisest, funniest, and most charming characters I've seen in a show. I think we all know which episode really makes you come to this realization. Season 2, episode 15, Tales of Ba Sing Se, hello! Not that it's a competition, but Iroh is able to mirror the show's messages on being kind and showing love so much better than Katara, and it's because he just feels genuine about it. There's multiple times in the show where Katara lashes out at people that she doesn't fully know, which I don't blame her for the record given her traumatic history with the Fire Nation, but Iroh no doubt has seen some shit too. He had to bury his own child, yet he moves through life with an appreciation for the beauty around him. The world is a place meant to explore and discover, not shelter within, which gives reason for why Iroh is pretty upset for the first time in the whole show in the first half of season 3. The longer the show progresses, the more you realize where Iroh's priorities lie. They're less in the war or anything remotely political, and more in family and the things he loves around him. It's his true selflessness that oftentimes leads to his troubles, but his actions always vibrate and resonate with those around him, no matter how far away from them he is at any given time. I mean, obviously, right? When I was just a young little guy, Zuko always intimidated me. Didn't scare me because I knew he didn't have it in him to hurt me, but he was just so goddamn angry all the time. And I think that's what makes him one of the most interesting characters and probably the best character in the show. Avatar, at the end of the day, is a show about reliance. Aang can't exist without Appa, Saka without Katara, the Fire Nation can't exist without air. Baby, that's just science. Everything needs everything, and Zuko is the only character in the show that can't seem to get this through his mind. Zuko came into this show with war and domination as his priority, but more importantly, the necessity to impress his family and empire, but little to no thought for what he wants himself. And as things are taken away from him and won back over, as he's taken advantage of time and time again, he has to question what's right and what's wrong, and when you don't know what your identity is, that's a really hard decision to make. And it really just boils down to, no pun intended, Zuko's existence being the perfect example of a person who can't control their emotions, learning how to do so through loss, regret, and forgiveness. And he's also just so fucking cool. Look at him. And you know what? That's where I think I stand with Avatar. Like I said, this will absolutely not be the last Avatar-related video I make. The show just has too much to unpack and talk about, and I really love it. But that'll do for today. Thanks for watching. Go watch Avatar and form your own opinion. And before you head out, I want to thank the lovely people over at Squarespace for sponsoring this week's episode. Now, Squarespace, have you heard of it? They're a place where you can go online to build your brand, whether that be through an online store, a blog, a portfolio, you name it. They have a wide array of award-winning designer templates. These templates have won awards that will make whatever your website is look fantastic. And they have 24-hour customer service to walk you through any issues you run into. The best part about it all is that if you go to squarespace.com/Karsten, you can get 10% off of your first purchase. So really, there's no reason not to give it a shot. So thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.